Hi everyone, it is 1 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. My name is Kristen Fleming, and I am the Education and Training Coordinator for the Alzheimer's Disease Caregiver Support Initiative. For those of you who are not familiar with our program, we have a grant from the New York State Department of Health to provide services for caregivers in 6 counties. And they are Clinton, Franklin, Essex, Warren, Washington, and Hamilton counties. And our main office is located out of the Center for Neurobehavioral Health at SUNY Plattsburgh. And in order to qualify for our services, you just have to be a caregiver of someone with any form of memory loss or dementia, not just Alzheimer's disease, even though it is in our name. I know that confuses some people sometimes, so I like to point that out. Some of our services that we provide are education and training. Right now, we're doing a bunch of webinars virtually. We're also doing some caregiver conferences with guest speakers. So those are really good presentations for caregivers to tune into. There's always a question and answer session at the end. So I really like to highlight those. We're also doing tele-support groups right now over the phone. It's very easy. You just call in on the number, and all of our groups are meeting on the conference call line right now, which is actually works out pretty well, since then you're not having to drive, especially if you live in a more rural area. You might have had to drive 20 or 30 minutes before to get to our nearest support group. So a lot of caregivers are actually enjoying the fact that it's just happening virtually right now. We also offer memory cafes virtually. So those are entertainment and social events for caregivers and the people they're caring for. We have musicians or other forms of entertainment. People come on video and get to meet virtually. Our next one is going to be on August 20th at 2 p.m. and it's with Ace Entertainment. They're going to be doing some music and storytelling, so it's going to be a lot of fun. If you'd like to register for that, just let me know. We also offer respite. That's a limited part of our program, but we do offer hours for you to have someone come into your home, stay with your loved one so you can get out of the house, go out to lunch with a friend, go to your doctor's appointments, go to the dentist, get your hair done, whatever it is that you would like to do with that time. It's your time to use it to get a break. And it is limited. It's not meant to be full-time care for your loved one, but it's nice to get out of the house and get to relax for a little bit. And then the last thing I want to talk about is Project Lifesaver. So that is a bracelet that your loved one would wear, and it would track them in the event that they wandered. Let's say you go to the bathroom or you wake up in the middle of the night and they're nowhere to be found. We would contact the sheriff's department, and they would use the bracelet and radio frequency waves to track where your person is. It actually works really well. And the nice thing is that most areas in the United States use this program. So say you're on vacation next year in Florida, call the sheriff's department down there and they will most likely be able to help you find your loved one. So it's a really good program. Now today, I'm here to talk to you about creating a strong care team. And one thing I want to point out is normally I give this book away when I do these presentations in person before COVID. So this is The Caregiver's Journey to Building Your Care Team. And what I've been doing is either dropping these books off that go along with the webinars or mailing them to caregivers. So if that's something you're interested in, just let me know. And I would be happy to send this to you or to drop it off on your front porch if you live in the Plattsburgh area. It's really nice to have something to read after you finish the presentation. And then I also will usually put a copy of the PowerPoint with that too, and some other resources depending on the presentation. Sometimes I have handouts that go along with everything. So let me know if that is something you're interested in, and I'd be happy to get that to you. Now, let's move to the next slide. Come on, there we go. So what is a care team? A care team are the people around you who provide you with help, care, support, and connections through the course of your caregiving journey. I really like to point out to caregivers how important it is to have a care team. No one can do the caregiving on their own 100% of the time. At some point, you are going to need help. Otherwise, you'll get burnt out. So that's why it's really important to establish a care team so that it's not all relying on one person. Having a care team can help both the primary caregiver and the person with dementia with feeling of being overwhelmed and stressed. In the early stages of dementia, having a care team in place may help with allowing them more independence and help them lead an active and productive life. This also helps with caregiver burden and burnout. You know, we hear a lot of times that caregivers don't take care of themselves. They put the other person first, and they end up getting so stressed and overwhelmed with everything that's going on that eventually they burn out to the point of exhaustion. So that's why it's really important to put this care team in place and help alleviate some of that caregiver burden. There's a care team in place. It can also help with emergencies, making them go a little bit smoother, and the plan that's been developed with your team will allow you all to know who will handle what when emergencies happen. So making sure you have a few people who can stay with your loved one in the hospital in the event that they are hospitalized, so they're not alone, and it's not ending up being only one person who's available to stay with them, because then that person never gets a chance to go home and take a shower. So having a plan in place can be really helpful. Even if the person being cared for isn't able to make decisions anymore on their own during the later stages of their dementia, you should still include them in their team. You should try to include them as much as possible, and they may even have new ideas of who you could include on the team. So start by making a list of anyone who already helps with caring for your loved one, whether that's family members, friends, neighbors, people from your church, and think of anybody else who supports you in your role as a caregiver. So some ideas of people you could consider. Definitely you want to include the person that's receiving care, family members, friends, people from church. If you have a house cleaner, your mailman, a handyman, the people who come and deliver your meals, if you have Meals on Wheels, yard workers, hairdresser, paid aides, any volunteers. And anytime you run into someone at the grocery store or wherever and they say, oh, let me know what I can do, I want to help, include them, find ways that they can help. The best place to start is by having a team meeting. So try to have the meeting in a location that's comfortable and convenient for the majority of the people attending. So if you're spread out in different parts of the state, maybe meet in a neutral location at a restaurant. Now that COVID is happening, you know, more and more people are having meetings over Zoom or over FaceTime, Skype. So you could consider having it virtually if that's going to be more convenient for people. Just figure out what works best for your group. And in a successful meeting, it's important to allow each person to be heard, that all feelings are expressed and acknowledged. If there's an environment that feels safe, people are going to be more likely to talk about how they're feeling, and they also may be willing to talk about other situations that are going on in their own lives that might make caregiving more challenging. Their openness can help everyone talk about their fears and concerns about the future as well, and how they can help, what their strengths are and their hopes for the future are as well. In some cases, the team meeting happens before all of the information about the diagnosis is fully understood. So it's important not to try to solve all of the what ifs before you have all of the details from the doctor. You know, that you can definitely end up going down a rabbit hole worrying about the future and all of these possibilities. The goal is for everyone to work as a team regardless of other conflicts that could be happening. One way to help is to use something called I statements, where you would say, I feel this way, instead of you should be helping out more. because depending on how you phrase things, people might be more receptive and willing to listen, or they might become more defensive and kind of shut down. It can also be helpful if you try to think about what everybody else is understanding and find something that you agree with, even if it isn't everything. So everybody wants to be providing the best possible care for your loved one. That's the key. Everybody loves them and cares about them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be part of this team. Now, you might disagree on what the best way to provide that care is and what that means for everyone, but keep that in mind in the back of your head, that they want the best care for your loved one possible. In a lot of situations, people will believe they only need to have one meeting in the beginning stages. However, it's important to have meetings regularly. In some cases, having one at a specific time can be helpful. So maybe you meet once a month or once a week, the same Sunday at 2 o'clock, you all have a conference call. Or first Friday of the month, you meet up for dinner, whatever it is. In some cases, it's not possible to do that. So at least try to have one when the caregiving situation changes, or if there's a change in any person's life situation, whether that be they're moving, there's a difference in their health or their family life, they're not going to be able to help as much, they're going to need other people to step up. It's really important to have meetings when those types of things change. Excuse me, it's a hot day today, so I'm trying to stay hydrated. Care team tips. If you're the leader of your care team, there are some things you should think about when it comes to leading your team. So usually the leader is whoever the primary caregiver is. Think about things that might come up in the future, especially as you talk to your doctor and learn more about the specific type of dementia that your loved one has, and you can figure out what some common symptoms and how the stages might change their needs as time goes on. Also think about what you're going to do in an emergency situation, what you're going to do if you can no longer be the primary caregiver, have a backup plan in place, and that can help things go a little more smoothly if it does happen. It's important to show your team respect and be sure that they know you appreciate them. If a team member gives you input, make sure you listen, but still show confidence when you're making decisions. A lot of times in families, everybody has an opinion, but if you're the primary caregiver, you know best. And that can be really tricky, but you're the one who's there day in and day out with your loved one. And so some people will disagree with what they think needs to happen, but at the end of the day, you know what's best for the person you're caring for, and you're the one who needs to be in charge of making the final decision. Match team members up with tasks and needs creatively. So let's say one of your neighbors is an excellent cook and they can make meals for you, but they're not comfortable doing any hands-on care, or they can run errands for you, they can do yard work for you. Maybe other people are super personable and comfortable being around your loved one, and they're the ones who are going to say, hey, on Tuesday night, I will stay with your mom, I'll cook her dinner, I'll get her cleaned up afterwards and put her to bed, and then you can go out and have dinner with your husband, so you get away from the caregiving for a night, a week, or something like that. Be brave and ask for help too. I think a lot of times people are reluctant to ask for help because they think people should either offer for them, or they think they should be able to do it all and they don't need anyone's help. But it's almost impossible to do all of the caregiving on your own 100% of the time. So that's why it's important to ask for help and know that that's not a sign of weakness. I actually see it as a sign of strength to be able to say to someone, hey, I need help with this. If someone says no, when you do ask them for help, that can be really discouraging for people. So try to be flexible and don't take it personally. Think of it as them saying no to whatever the specific task is that you ask them for help with, or maybe you don't know what's going on in their personal life. And move on to the next person. There's always other people that you can ask for help. Even though dementia is scary, overall people do want to help and make a difference. Volunteering can bring meaning into people's life, and it can help with isolation. People are often seen helping in hospitals and nonprofit organizations, but it seems like a lot of caregivers are taking care of their loved ones at home on their own. The reason for this could be that it hits too close to home for some people. We're told from a young age, too, to mind our own business, that what's going on in someone else's personal life isn't any of our business. We should keep to ourselves. So people might not want to intrude, or they want to help, but they're not sure how to help. In care teams, people will often duplicate what other people are doing because they're unsure of what else to do. So you might have everyone bringing over casseroles for dinner, but you need someone to mow the lawn, or someone to sit with your mom so you can go to your doctor's appointment, whatever it may be. So it can be helpful to ask people to do specific tasks for you that are suited to what their skills are. And it could also be helpful to have a list, of what you might need help with. So you could say, hey, I really need someone to do this. And if they say, oh no, I'm not comfortable doing that, well, okay, could you do this instead? When it comes to the caregiving responsibilities, it can be helpful to talk about what they are. This can be done in a family meeting, and try to include the person receiving the care. It's also important to do this before there's an emergency. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but talk about what's needed now, but then also plan for the future. Naming a primary caregiver is a good first step. This can be done even if one's not needed right now. If you're in the really early stages, your loved one might still be living on their own, or have a different situation, but in the future things could change, and it might be helpful to have one in mind, and helpful in a crisis as well. Caregiving responsibilities will change as the person progresses through the disease, so it's important to talk about the needs of the person as they come up. Listen to the person with dementia now, especially early in the stages too, to find out what their wishes are for the future. And what other team members are seeing can help determine the best care for your loved one. Sometimes it can be helpful to have different roles for everyone. So you could have someone be the assistant. That might be the backup caregiver, the right-hand man. You have someone be the researcher who's looking into different programs like the Alzheimer's Disease Caregiver Support Initiative, the Center for Excellence, the adult day programs that are in the area. Be researching home health aides or people who could come into the house. The arranger, that could be the person who's calling doctors and making all the appointments for you. The experienced caregiver, that could be someone for the primary caregiver to call when they're not really sure what to do or they're feeling really discouraged. The head cook, that could be the person to make all the meals. The creative person, they could come in and maybe do an art project, or they could do listen to music, or I don't know, watch a play, think outside the box with activities to do with your loved one. Someone who has a special skill like a handyman, or someone who could do landscaping, yard work. The shopper, who's going to go grocery shopping for your loved one, or run and get their prescriptions when they can't drive anymore, but they're still maybe living on their own or in a shared apartment area. Even kids and teens, they can help out. They could help prepare a meal. They could spend time with your loved one. A lot of times kids really do put your loved one, the person with dementia, at ease. They enjoy telling stories or doing art projects or different things with their grandchildren. So that can be a really good activity for them to still do and to still look forward to. And you could have someone as the driver, the person who's going to take them to and from appointments and things like that. So think outside the box. There's a lot of different options for ways people can help. Splitting responsibilities. So when you're thinking about tasks you're able to do within the care team, think about things you would rather not do as well. If you're not a local person, then how much would you be willing to travel? Don't only think about the financial piece, how much it would cost for you to drive or maybe fly if you're across country, but also the mental part of it. If you're traveling every weekend to be with your loved one, that's going to be exhausting. But maybe you could do it once a month. If you're helping care for your parents, how do you feel about the roles being reversed? Can you stay calm yet be assertive? Are you comfortable helping with the personal care, like toileting and bathing? A lot of times people tend to be uncomfortable with that. They don't really want to help their father take a shower, which is understandable. So maybe you're going to hire a home health aide to come in every other day to help give your dad a shower. Think about that. Think about work and home life. How will caregiving affect these pieces of your life? So, you know, a lot of times nowadays we talk about the sandwich generation, and those are people who are taking care of their elderly parents, but still have kids or teenagers at home too, and they're still working full time. So they're trying to balance all of these hats and different people they have to care for. So how are you going to balance all of that? How much can you really contribute when you are working full time and have kids and a family of your own? Be realistic of what you're willing to do, and think about a schedule and how you can help out the primary caregiver reasonably without burning out yourself. Also keep in mind that over time, the needs may change. So you may need to revise what you're able or willing to do. So let's say you are an adult child of a parent who is the primary caregiver. So either your mom or your dad is the primary caregiver for your mom or your dad or your step parent. Oftentimes when a spouse is caring for a loved one, they're hesitant to ask for help, even from their adult children. So they might need a bit more convincing about taking a break, but it is good for them to take a break. So it can be helpful to acknowledge just how much the primary caregiver is doing for their loved one. And even though caregiving can be satisfying, you want to take care of your loved ones, it's also hard work. So talk to your parent about the physical and emotional effects of caregiving. Offer to arrange respite care for your parent. Arranging it for him or herself might just seem like it's too hard, or they're not willing to have a stranger come into their home. But you can either arrange for it in the home, or there are adult day programs too that you could take your loved one to. I know in Plattsburgh there's Third Age, and there's also Plattsburgh Nursing and Rehab. They both have adult day programs, which are an excellent option if you don't want people coming into your home, but you do want a little bit of a break. I know both of those programs are currently closed because of the COVID pandemic, and I'm not sure what their reopening plan is. And there are some other programs down in the southern area. I know there's Lena's in the Queensbury area, and I do believe they're opening back up on the limited basis, following social distancing protocols. So that's an option if you do live in that area. You can also arrange for a respite break in a skilled nursing facility. So a lot of people don't realize this, but you could actually have your loved one stay in a nursing home for 2 weeks, and you could go on vacation. So that's another option too, especially maybe once COVID is over. I know right now I think people are reluctant to do some of those things, but it's something to keep in mind for the future. At some point, your parent might need more help in the home in order for them to stay safely at home. So you could look for paid caregivers too. And sometimes I know a lot of people are more comfortable having a paid caregiver that they know is also being safe right now, not spending a lot of time out in large groups, washing hands, wearing masks, all of those things. So they feel like that's a safer option right now if they do need a break. It gives them, if you're, let's say your parent is reluctant to hire someone because they don't think your other parent will respond well to it, or they don't think they're gonna like having a babysitter. A lot of times people say, oh, I don't need a babysitter, I'm an adult. But point out that the way you approach it could make all the difference. So let's say you have, instead of having a stranger, you have a friend or a family member come and stay with your loved one. Well, they might be a little more receptive to that. Or if you say, hey, I have someone coming to clean the house on Tuesday and they're going to be here while I go out to the grocery store, well, they might be more receptive to that than they would be to, oh, I have a stranger coming in to watch you, to look after you. So think about how you approach it as well. At some point, the person being cared for may need to go into a nursing home or assisted living. So if your parent decides that they might be ready to look into these, help them look at facilities. If they decide to place in a facility, they might need help adjusting to being home alone. A lot of times people might feel guilty or worried, maybe I didn't make the right choice. So even just being a listening ear can be really helpful for them. So the long distance caregiver, the person who lives several hours away, know what you need to know. So you could, let's say you live far away or you're looking for some ways to stay connected, or you have a loved one who lives further away and they want to help but aren't sure how. Well, they could be the researcher. They could learn as much as they can about the illness, medications, resources that could be available. Learning about the illness can help you know how to plan for the future better, and knowing what to expect will also help in the case of emergencies. You could also plan your visits. So when you're going to be visiting your loved one, have a plan ahead of time of what you would like to do or help out with, especially if you're only visiting for a short time. You might get more done and be less stressed about it if you talk to your loved one ahead of time and plan out, okay, these are the projects I want to get done or activities I want to do with him. If there's one, check in with the primary caregiver and see what he or she might need. And maybe you can take on some of the caregiving responsibilities while you're visiting. Remember to spend time with the person, to do fun things, activities together, go for a walk, watch the birds, listen to music, tell stories, play games. All of those things can help create memories and help everyone relax and enjoy the time together. Some families will also request conference calls with doctors, the assisted living home or nursing home, even if they live out of state, so that everyone's able to get the same information and ask questions. And sometimes you might want to get help from a social worker as well. They can help bring in an outside perspective and give a realistic view on what's happening and how to better plan for the future. Help stay in touch. This could be making sure there's a phone in your loved one's room in a nursing home or in their apartment, or teaching them how to use a cell phone. In some cases, it could be a lifeline, like an emergency response bracelet. It all depends on your family and your loved one. And learn about caregiving. Most of us don't automatically have caregiving skills. So for some, it could be helpful to get some caregiving training. We have an excellent program through our grant that's an online training called CARES. It's wonderful for family caregivers, and it can help give you some of the basics of how to help move someone, help them bathe, some basic first aid. And know what your loved one's preferences are. Everyone has a different routine, so you want to try to follow that as best you can too. So family dynamics. This is a really tricky one for a lot of people. In fact, I have a whole training just on family dynamics that's, I did it last week and it's up on our website. So if you want to watch the replay, it is at wehelpcaregivers.com. You click on education and webinar recording. So if you would like more information on family dynamics, feel free to check that out. Because this is a really tricky situation. So some things to keep in mind. No one is a mind reader. So if in your family is having some conflict or they're not quite agreeing on what to do, make sure you're listening to others and talking to them about how you're feeling personally. No one's going to be able to read your mind and know what you're thinking. So they don't know how you're feeling unless you tell them. If you appear that you're handling it, they might believe that you are. You know, we all know people who like to pretend like they have these perfect lives and they have everything under control, but under the surface, they might be really struggling. And if you don't share that, then everyone might assume that, oh, you have it under control, you're dealing with it just fine. So check in with the primary caregiver if you're not him or her and ask how they're handling it. And if you are the primary caregiver, let people know, hey, this is really hard. I'm really struggling with this. I could use a break. I could use help with X, Y, and Z. Really important. Match the tasks that you're asking people to do with the person. So make a list of all of the things you can use help with and allow people to take tasks that they're willing to do and what they're comfortable with. Pick your battles. This can be really tricky for people, but think about how important or necessary it is for family members to do things the way that you do them. So let's say you have someone who offers to do the lawn work for you, but they don't do it exactly the way you would. That's kind of tricky. If you complain too much about how they do it, then they're not gonna wanna help you again in the future. So good enough is good. That's good enough is okay sometimes. And call for breaks. So if you're in a family meeting and it turns into a shouting match, ask for everyone to take a break. Walk away for 15 minutes, have a glass of water, take some deep breaths. If people are unable to calm down in that time, then it might be a better idea to reschedule the meeting to another time within the next few weeks. And if you were the one who lost your temper, apologize. Not for your opinion's valid, but for the way you expressed it, for losing your temper. And then outside the family, this is really helpful. You could talk to friends, counselors, support group. Like I said before, we still are offering all of our support groups over the telephone. So if you need someone to vent to outside your family, you can call in to our support group. Our next one's actually tomorrow afternoon at 6 p.m. Well, tomorrow evening, I guess, at 6 p.m. And if you do decide to take it to an online forum, I know there are Facebook groups for caregivers, keep in mind that that's open to the public. So your loved ones and your family, they might be able to see what you posted. So keep that in mind. And keep everyone up to date. A lot of times family arguments will start because a person feels like they're being left out of all of the discussion. So regular meetings, either in person or over the phone, can help keep everyone on the same page. And if there is a person who's good with the internet, you could ask them to set something up for everyone to go to so they can stay updated if that works for your family. Right. So if you are the primary caregiver, think about these things. Have you ever felt or thought any of these? You are the only person capable of caring for your loved one. It's easier just to do it yourself. If someone else helps, you won't get the credit that you deserve. You'll be rejected if you ask for help, and then you will just get angry. People will think you're incapable or less loving if you ask for help. Other people's lives and plans are more important than your own. People should know what you need and you shouldn't have to ask for help, or no one will help you no matter what you say. These are all really common things for people to think. So you're not alone if you're thinking one of these things, but think about why you aren't asking for help, and try to adjust your thinking, because these aren't necessarily true. Home health care. So home health aides would come into your home and help care for your loved one. The aides can provide company or care for your loved one. You could ask them to stay just for a few hours or for 24 hours. A lot of times they're charged by the hour, and in some cases, insurance will help pay, but most insurances do not. You can find home health care aides by talking to your doctor. I do know a lot of the caregivers in my support groups are also using something called care.com to help find companions to stay with their loved ones. If you apply for respite through our grant, we have a list of care providers in your area. You could also, through our respite program, use a friend or a family member that you already know, which is something that a lot of times people really like. So you do have a few options if you are looking for someone to come into your home. There's also adult day programs, which provide a safe environment for people to leave their loved one for a few hours or just for the day. While you're there, your loved one will have the opportunity to participate in activities, socialize with others, and this can be a really good break for caregivers and for the care recipient. A lot of times they really enjoy these adult day programs. So some adult day centers have transportation provided as well. They usually charge by the hour, but sometimes by the day. Insurance companies do not cover these costs. Respite, I mentioned this a little bit before, but this can be done in the home or in a facility. It allows for a break. It could go for a few hours. It could go for a day. It could go for weeks. Medicare may cover up to 5 days, but it is not covered by insurance. And lastly, I just want to remind everyone that the Alzheimer's Disease Caregiver Support Initiative, we're here to help you. So if you are struggling with creating a strong care team, care navigators can meet with families. I could meet with families and discuss what's going on and how you can all support your loved one or the primary caregiver the best way possible. So if you have any questions, feel free to type them into the Q&A box right now. I'll wait a few minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to, like I said in the beginning, I'm happy to send this book along. It has a lot of good information. You can read through it. You could maybe share it with a family member who feel like it could use a little more help from them. And we're here to help. I can stop sharing my screen. Well, if there are no questions, I want to thank you very much for attending this presentation. I hope you all have a great afternoon, and I hope to see you again at one of our upcoming programs. Take care, everyone.